All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, she released her caucus's coronavirus relief bill yesterday, and it was such an abomination that I'm honestly impressed. And a familiar joke to some of you, if you'd asked me to come up with a parody cartoon plan for the most Pelosi plan of all time, I'm still not sure that I could have come up with something like this. Analysts quickly pointed out that the bill repeals the state and local taxes cap deduction, which of course literally only helps her wealthy constituents in San Francisco and Chuck Schumer's wealthy constituents in New York City. And on top of that, the bill includes a bailout for the lobbying industry, a study on how to expand financial services to female-owned marijuana companies, and it cuts taxes to rich people in blue states who own real estate, it bails out mortgage servicers, and even has a provision for bailing out debt collectors. The bill includes some good things, like a bailout for state and local governments and another one-time payment of $1,200 to Americans. But there's just one thing that's missing from it, if you might notice when you watch Rising. That's right. Missing from the grab bag of the lobbyist desires is the Josh Hawley-like plan put forward by some members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus to keep American workers on business payroll. And the really crazy part is that this bill has absolutely zero chance of becoming law. This bill is basically a campaign vehicle to signal the party's priorities and have some ground on which to negotiate next week with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. So let's digest that even further. Even in a symbolic bill meant to convey their priorities to the American people in this crisis, should they ever get into power, Pelosi finds it too much to pick up the payroll of American businesses, forced to close by their own government, while providing huge tax cuts to the blue state rich alongside token payments to suffering Americans. That about sums up the Democratic Party under Joe Biden. Repeal SALT deductions, bail out blue state rich, put billions of dollars towards paying for inane diversity and inclusion programs. All while regular American workers get pennies thrown at them during the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. Now look, I'm not saying that there's all that much hope on the Republican side either. But at least over there is not an active campaign to destroy the people proposing things like paying Americans payroll during this crisis or stopping offshoring from China. I highly doubt any of that will make its way into the bill, but the active antipathy by the establishment wing of the party is simply not there the way that the Democrats are acting right now to their economic populist brethren on the left. Day after day, the result of what Washington will do to us is becoming clear. We are probably headed for another Great Depression. Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis President Neil Kashkari revealed Sunday that the real unemployment rate is already 23 to 24%. 43% of small businesses already face permanent closure. The crisis has gone on long enough, and the fiscal response has been so wanting that we have destroyed untold number of firms and left tens of millions to languish on unemployment, hoping that the additional benefits will get extended come August. And think about this. We're going to have one of the biggest fights of our political lives in August over extending extra unemployment benefits, when all along we could have just kept firms together by picking up some portion of their payroll costs and phasing that through to when the economy will fully reopen again. We are setting ourselves up for endless squabbles over extra paycheck protection money, unemployment benefits, and more, when the solution is staring us blue in the face and we absolutely refuse to take it seriously. Irish economist David McWilliams, he put this very well recently, saying, quote, "We have an economic vaccine. It's called money. We know the central bank prints it. It doesn't even have to print it. It just has to put zeros after people's accounts. We have the vaccine. We know what to do. And amazingly, we're not using it because some of the morality idea that we can't do this because it will lead to inflation when we know we're in a deflationary spiral. It is absolutely nonsensical. It is as mad as a laboratory having the vaccination for COVID-19 and saying we're not going to use it."
What a great quote.
Is a phenomenal quote. And just, I mean, and somebody who really knows what he's talking about. He used to work for the central bank there. And it just portrays how, I mean, look, this is what, obviously, the Pelosi bill is utterly ridiculous. And I think that as a political signaling thing, that is not where you want to be as a party. I mean, you're going and bailing out the lobbyist industry. I mean, who bails out debt collectors in the middle of a pandemic and an economic recession? You want to bail out people like payday loan lenders while normal people are racking up debts? I think that's deranged and insane. I mean, we went all the way down the wall, SALT cap, etc. And that's, I mean, we just talked about this with yours. Even in the symbolic bill, to kick that part of the plan in the face, even when you're trying to message your priorities, not to include that, it actually does tell you everything you need to know about exactly what they stand for. This is like active war against any sort of effort in order to pay Americans payroll. And that is the crazy part.
It's active war against the left of the party. And actually, like, this whole dynamic reminds me so much of the argument, like the core argument that Democrats always make to try to keep their people in the fold, which is like, sure, yeah, we bailed out the lobbyists, and yeah, we bailed out the debt collectors, and you didn't get your, like, you know, small business stuff that you wanted, progressive, so cute that you put that forward, but at least we're better than the Republicans.
Yes.
I mean, that's the bar. And you know what? It is, but the Republicans haven't offered anything. They just want to, like, protect corporations more. And so that's why Democrats keep going, I guess we're stuck with these people. I guess we're stuck with these people. I guess we're stuck with this response. I guess this is the best that we can do. They're also, Democrats, always amazing, too, at making a ton of excuses for why they can't do more, right? In this one, this is from Politico. First of all, it'd be too expensive. It'd be too complicated. Every other country seems to have managed to figure this out. We can't figure it out. Give me a break. The other one they love to use is, we only control 1/3 of government, so we have to deal with those bad Republicans, and this is the best that we can do. The Republicans aren't even going to give you this. So you may as well actually put out there a plan that would be up to the task. And then the last one, and this one is really my favorite, is next time. Next time. Every single bill, what do we hear? Well, we're not done. This is just phase 1. This is just phase 2. Well, this is just phase 3. Right? This is 3.5. Next time, we haven't finished this conversation. Next time, you're going to get the things that are actually going to help the economy. They make all these excuses. It's, well, at least we're slightly better than the Republicans, so what are you going to do? And in the end, when you make that choice over and over and over and over again and let them get away with it, it is the road to hell.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, look, let's break this down. This is a $3 trillion bill. It's not like it isn't the most ambitious spending bill. It's that the money is going to the wrong place.
Right.
That paycheck program that we were talking about, that's $600 billion over a couple of months. I mean, look, that's a lot of money, but put it in relative to the $3 trillion and maybe pay a little bit less for diversity and inclusion program for cannabis-owned businesses. Maybe that's just me. I mean, if you're signaling your priorities as woke politics, I mean, we've talked about this. The last time that they released a bill, they had some diversity and inclusion program about how corporate boards needed to have a minority female figure on them or something. It's like, okay, does a corporate board that offshores Americans' job with a minority female on its board, does that make you feel better when you lose a job? Does that make an African-American person who loses their factory job feel better that somebody who is of their own skin color happened to offshore and destroy their livelihood? No, it's the most ludicrous way of thinking.
So boils down like the difference between the two parties too, because they go, well, at least we're better than the Republicans. Don't even want diversity, so it's the same shipping the jobs overseas, but at least we've got like some diverse figures who are able to climb up the ladder. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. And look, I'm good with the female-owned marijuana business provision. I don't have a problem with it.
It's just
an absurd. It's maybe second line of work for me, Saagar. It's just absurd when you have just that without the other pieces. Like, it's ridiculous. Even the salt cap thing, like, you know what? If you had a real program in here for workers and small business,
give it away.
Okay. Right. And there are some arguments actually that Ryan Grim was making in favor of this gives states more ability to tax the wealth. Okay, maybe. All right. But when you do that just alone, it's ridiculous. Yes. Just like a payroll tax cut just alone in a time when 33 million Americans are unemployed is ridiculous. But they get you because they're like, well, we did a little bit more than the Republicans, so you have to stick with us. You have no other choice. And that is what's so frustrating and outrageous. I mean, we're going to look back on this time for decades and see an utter and complete failure all the way around.
I agree with you.
All the way around. I mean, it will be looked at with as much contempt or more than the response to the 2008 recession. And on the money piece, you're so right. other countries have spent less per capita, but in a more direct and effective way. And so they haven't had the job losses that we've had. Now that they're reopening.
And their firms are intact.
Right. And now that when they're starting to reopen, people are just going back to work, and it's much smoother transition. And that's not to say they're not having their own pain and going to have their own problems, or that their responses have been perfect either. I don't think that anyone's have. But the dramatic failure, the waste of money, the people and the firms that got spent on, not only is it going to affect the now and the pain now, it's going to affect the recovery, and is going to reshape the landscape of our economy for decades to come.
It is. And, just before we started this, I was reading a Washington Post story. 100,000 small businesses have already closed. And I do think this is the greatest opening for whoever wants to take it. I'm not saying, I don't think it will come right now. I think we're probably 3 years away. But whoever wants, either the left will go to war with its own establishment, or the right will go to war with its own establishment. And you see this dynamic right now. Like, look, I'm not saying the Senate GOP is offering anything great. I think what they're offering is incredibly stupid. But they're not going to active war with the people who are proposing some of these types of things. They just ignore them. And maybe that's because it's a little bit more nascent, or maybe it's a political dynamic that be exploited. I still have no idea. Whoever can actually go to war with the establishment in their own party, take it over, and have the actual wherewithal in order to push that as their national agenda, I think they're the person who's sitting on a 65-70% of the country.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
It's interesting, that dynamic. I need to think more about it. But I think it's partly on the right, because basically, like, Trump was the threat.
Yeah, he was.
Right? And he won, but they were able to co-opt him. Mm-hmm. So it's no longer threatening to them. It's like, sure, Josh Hawley, that's nice. Yeah, go out and do your thing.
Right.
But Mitch McConnell still knows that he runs that town. Mm-hmm. The big priority of the Trump administrations end up being like Paul Ryan's freaking tax cut.
Yes.
So they don't feel threatened.
They don't feel threatened right now. I'm not. I also just don't know, because I think that in some level they do understand that rhetorically it needs to continue happening. They're like, oh, well, that is how Trump won.
Yeah.
We'll just graft whatever crap that we can.
Totally. And then
this.
what we really do is
really
going to be the same old crap.
Tax cut.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, in terms of the fight on that, I've thought a lot about it as well, about how to actually make this sort of thing happen. It's just a little bit different of a dynamic, because there's not an active, overt public war. It's all internal signaling. It's like fooling you that you're acting on your behalf and then doing something under the table. So I actually think on the left, it's a problem of they have no fight for the public. And on the right, what it actually is more of an institutional game, is that they let the institutions and all these people who run the town co-opt their stuff because they just don't have the capacity. So I just think that in terms of where the balance of where the fight goes.
Well, and McConnell is a much savvier and smarter operator than anyone on on the Democratic side. Mm-hmm. So he knows how to basically run the show, defang the insurgencies, make them feel like they're being heard, while still doing the same old playbook without it being over war. He knows how to do that much better. And then on the left, I think they still feel threatened by this because, young people are very much not on the side of the Democratic establishment. So it still feels like an active threat. So they're more overtly hostile, I think, is the dynamic that's playing out. But it's interesting to think about why they play that hand a little bit differently.
We'll keep covering it here.
Yeah.
I do think I think it's the greatest political opportunity of the century. And even though we're in the worst times, it's already been done before. Look at FDR. FDR was king of America, basically. It isn't that hard to do.
Yeah.
All you have to do is help people. So
shouldn't be that hard, but it sure seems to be. Next up on Rising, Facebook has decided to make its own sort of Supreme Court for the internet. Friend of the show, Matt Stoller, is going to tell us what exactly that is doing when Rising continues.